Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Scotland and a new week for Plein April, and actually our final week of the 30-day painting challenge. I started off the week just walking around the local forests and discovering some cute little fairy steps, which obviously I had to sketch. And since it was a really busy week for me, I found myself doing a lot of my paintings out and about. Well, hello from a very rainy, you can't quite see it, but I'll show you some clips. From a very rainy Loch Ness. I'm at a little overview overlook spot on the road home. I just went to the dentist, so I'm in a mood, but I thought this would cheer me up. And I haven't done my painting today yet. Usually this spot is the most gorgeous overlook. You can see Urquhart Castle in the distance and mountains, and it's just gorgeous. But at the moment, it looks like this. So I'm gonna set up my stuff to paint and just see if it changes. Usually the weather moves quick around here, so this little rainstorm might just pass by really fast. I don't know. I'll give myself like half an hour to feel it out. I find that painting from within the car, looking out at a view, can be hit or miss. On one hand, it's great to get that in-person experience, to be painting from life, seeing the colors and atmosphere and all the cool effects of weather in person really makes a difference, and I always learn so much. But on the other hand, it feels like I'm still slightly disconnected from my subject. Obviously, if it's pouring out, you kind of don't have a choice. But I recently saw a post on Instagram of someone painting from within a car because it was like negative 10 degrees and it was snowing. And their caption read something like, "It felt like cheating." And it got me thinking, like, no matter what, if you're painting from life, it's absolutely not cheating. You're still using the same observational skills. You're having to flatten your subject from 3D down to 2D. You're doing all the work still. You're just not as uncomfortable, maybe. So I try to get those thoughts out of my head and just enjoy the experience no matter what. And as you can see, my view started to drastically change by the time I finished, and I needed to head home, so I didn't want to start another one. But it just reminded me that I have to come back to this spot on a nice sunny day and paint those gorgeous mountains. Hello everyone, I just want to jump in here real quick and let you know that as of the time this video goes live, my new book, Sketching Scotland Volume 2, is available on Kickstarter. This has been 5 years in the making, and I am so excited that it's finally ready to share. If we hit our funding goal, I'll be making a big print run so that my shop can be stocked for hopefully years to come. And of course, I'll be offering bundles and special pricing of all my books on the Kickstarter. It's only up for a limited time, so make sure you go check it out. And I really want to thank you all for your encouragement over the years to continue this series. It's been a labor of love, but truly so excited to finally share it and that it will soon be out in the world. Okay, back to the video. Hello from a beautiful woodland waterfall. I hope you can hear me over the sound of the waterfall. I'm giving myself the challenge of painting here for 1 hour. And that's because when I visit a new place for the first time, especially something like this, everything is overwhelmingly beautiful. And I know I can come back here as many times as I want. And I think today is all about just introducing myself to the structure, to the shapes, the colors, and just kind of getting familiar with it. And the light is actually changing pretty quick. I got here early morning and the sun wasn't on the waterfall at all. And now it's like almost halfway over the waterfall. So, I only have so much time before everything changes. Okay, I've got a base layer started. I needed to paint really fast in order to get that down because it takes a minute to dry. And hopefully now I can start capturing some of the fun textures and dry brush and the colors that, and now that the sun is hitting the waterfall a little more, it's really pretty. I have my stuff set up here because I'm on a very steep hill and I can't like sit anywhere comfortably. So everything is just kind of like leaning on the hill, and I'm looking this way, and then I'm painting, and then I'm looking. It's a bit crazy, but it's working for now. Some tips for painting waterfalls. I like to start with my darker color. The rock is really wet and dark underneath, and especially in the deeper, shadowy bits, there's a lot more saturation and value that you can play with. I really like to intensify the contrast there. And then when I paint the waterfall flowing on top of that, it gives me that nice contrast without needing to use pure white, because in the shadows the water is not pure white, it's going to be tinted in some way. So then when the light hits it, maybe at the top of the waterfall, and you use more of a pure white, it really stands out and it gives you that separation of warm and cool. Okay, I think I need to call it here because the light has just completely changed. The waterfall is almost all in sunlight now. It's really hard to chase the light, and you don't want to be like constantly adjusting to match what you see when you started with a certain type of lighting. Well, you can to an extent, but on this kind of scene, it is really challenging because the color of the water, the color of the rocks, everything is drastically different in the sun. So I'm going to call it, and that was really enjoyable, even though it was kind of hectic. I think I'll just go capture some more reference photos and then head out. I am definitely going to be back to this spot though. Why, hello there. I am kind of in a weird spot. I'm on a little pullover, and you can't quite see. I'll show you some clips, but way down there is a gorgeous view of some mountains and lots of like little cool tree lines that kind of come down into this V shape. And I just love this composition. I had to turn around and come back up here because it was just so cool. It caught my eye. We have a beautiful sunny day with no clouds, which means there's not going to be any crazy shadow changes. And I think it'll just be a good opportunity to study greens as they go off into the distance, because there's such a huge change between these foreground trees and the distant trees. And it's always a good color challenge for me. I'm all set up, ready to paint, and I just got this overwhelming giddy feeling just realizing that I live here, and I can't, like, as an original Colorado girly, I feel so at home in the mountains and the forests. It's very grounding. And as much as I love the coast, just where we are now resonates with me so much more deeply. And I'm so grateful. And while I'm painting this, I know I'm just going to be flooded with that gratitude. Anyways, let's get to painting. I am definitely going to do a whole separate video of some of my biggest lessons learned and tips and tricks, and especially going into greens because that's been one of my big focuses this month. And there are fewer places I notice how much I've learned about mixing greens than when I do views like this, where I have several layers of like forests or something going back and back and back farther away in the distance, because all of those distant elements have to be so muted and the color differences are so close together compared to what we see in the foreground. And in order to create this sense of distance, you have to get that pretty accurate. You can have a bit more play and with color and contrast and stuff in the foreground, but if all of those background elements aren't subtle, you won't really get that separation. I hope that makes sense. So hopefully next week I'll come back with a final video in this series talking about lots of these little things I've learned. And of course, I'll definitely be going into much more detail over on Patreon as I continue to do my tutorials. I'm going to call it done here because already the light is really starting to change right in this area. This was just barely lit when I got here, and now this is all bright yellow. So things are changing pretty fast, but I think I got enough. Like this, it's in itself will be really good color notes for the future. Maybe a bit of separation here. The danger of doing this at the end is like you might lose some of that magical light that you captured at the beginning, the effect that you were going for. But yeah, it's changing too quick now that the sun is getting higher. I've made a lot of mental notes about what colors I was using while I was mixing, and just having this little reference along with my reference photos will help if I want to do a bigger painting in the future, which I think I do because I really like this view. I don't know if I would include the road in the future, but yeah, it's been really fun. Happy last day of Plein April. Happy April 30th. We came to somewhere really beautiful and kind of epic for the last day, just for fun. It's a little breezy, but hopefully you can hear me. It is one of the very hottest days we've had this year, so we are both kind of roasting in the sun. Wolfie just had his lunch. So I'm gonna jump right into painting and see what we can do before this crazy light changes. What I love is the glittering water and the intense shadows on the mountains. I love it all. I'm using liquid gouache today, and it's drying really fast already. And since we came to the coast, I'm using my very special Helio turquoise, just a little bit, because the water is just too beautiful without it. So, you know, when I did that waterfall painting, I mentioned how sometimes when I go to a place for the first time, I'm overwhelmed by beauty, and this was no exception. I gave myself about 10-15 minutes to just stare at it and kind of ease into understanding the colors. But I also knew that I couldn't wait forever to jump in because the light's always going to change. Giving yourself that short time in the beginning, though, does help because you can sort of ground yourself in the overall color palette, start thinking about which colors are more dominant and how much white you might need to mix in. One thing I like to do is hold up a dark piece of material, like maybe a black piece of fabric, hold that up in front of my subject and notice how much lighter things are than the black fabric. This gives me kind of a jumping off point, so I know even though at first glance something might look really, really dark, almost black, it's actually quite a bit lighter. And you can either add more color into it or a bit of white to lighten it and desaturate it, but just having that initial point of reference really helps. And I have to admit, this painting almost did me in. I mean, I was so close to giving up a couple times because it was so incredibly challenging. The sun was beating down on the canvas and my palette. I'm having to switch to my small round brush because it has short, stiff hairs, and I need to like push the paint. It's drying so fast. I have to be like very aggressive. And I'm using some of the colors straight from the tube, like the white. But the problem was it was such harsh lighting that I couldn't turn them into the shadow because it made everything too dark, like to the point where I could barely see what I was doing. And I had to have sunglasses on, otherwise I would have been blinded. So all of that combined meant I was just inundated with light. And of course, I had to look up and see my subject as well. So the fact that the paint was drying so fast meant that I had to constantly rinse my brush off and remix and refill it with color, which makes it really challenging when you're trying to do lots of dry brush layers, because when the brush is wet or even a little bit damp, that's much harder. But I think the only way that I was able to even finish this painting and do a decent job was because I was super warmed up from painting every single day for 30 days. So I guess it was a good thing that this fell on the last day, because I don't know if I would have made it otherwise. I did it! 30 days in a row, painting outside. What a crazy month. It was all weather you could possibly imagine, and we ended on the most beautiful sunny day. I'm gonna take some photos and references and little videos, and then we're gonna head home. It's nearly impossible to show this painting in the light because it's such harsh overhead light. So I'll do my best to take little clips and photos, but I'm gonna have to digest everything at home. And this might be one of my favorite paintings of the month, purely because it was challenging me on every level, and I used things I learned all month to paint it. And I don't hate the result, which is always a bonus. And it's just a beautiful location. I'm going to catch up with you at home, where it's a little less noisy and windy and we can see a little bit easier. Wow, what a month. Like I said, I'm going to do a whole separate video with lots of thoughts and lessons learned and everything in between. So stay tuned next week for that. Thank you for following along this fun adventure this month. I have been putting all of the videos from this series into a playlist if you want to go back and watch it all. And as a reminder, my new book is out on Kickstarter. That link is also in the description. And lastly, if you enjoyed this video and you're still watching, I would love it if you left a thumbs up and maybe a comment. Maybe let me know which painting you enjoyed the most this week. It's always so interesting to read which paintings resonate with different people, because we're all so different. Anyways, that's it for me this week. I will see you all again soon. Take care.